He had nothing but a sincere heart. She had everything money could buy. When a poor boy fell in love with America's richest girl, their bond was tested by power, pride, and ruthless wealth, proving that pure love is strongest when the world tries hardest to destroy it. He grew up in a world where every dollar mattered and every dream felt slightly out of reach. The poor boy learned early that survival came before ambition. His mornings began with cracked sidewalks, overcrowded buses, and the quiet hope that honesty and hard work would someday be enough. He wasn't bitter about his life. In fact, his lack of wealth had shaped him into someone gentle, patient, and deeply grateful for small joys. While others chased status, he chased purpose, believing that character was the only inheritance that couldn't be stolen. Her world could not have been more different. America's richest girl lived behind gates that guarded not just mansions, but legacies. Her days were planned by assistants, her future shaped by boardrooms instead of dreams. From private jets to elite galas, she was raised to understand power before emotion. Yet beneath the designer dresses and polished smiles lived a quiet loneliness. Surrounded by people who admired her wealth more than her heart, she longed for something real, something that money couldn't manufacture. Their worlds collided in the most ordinary place, a moment so simple it almost felt accidental. There was no dramatic entrance, no instant recognition of who she was. To him, she was just a girl with curious eyes and an unguarded laugh. To her, he was refreshingly unaware of her status, speaking with sincerity instead of strategy. That first conversation lingered longer than it should have, not because of attraction alone, but because neither felt judged in the other's presence. As they began meeting again, the contrast between their lives became impossible to ignore. He hesitated before suggesting places to go, always choosing modest cafes and public parks. She noticed, but instead of embarrassment, she felt relief. For the first time, she wasn't expected to impress anyone. The simplicity of his world felt honest, grounding, and safe. Slowly, affection grew, not fueled by luxury or convenience, but by shared conversations, laughter, and mutual respect. Still, reality waited patiently in the background. He noticed the subtle signs first. The expensive car that picked her up, the way strangers treated her differently, the phone calls she sometimes avoided answering around him. Questions formed in his mind, but he didn't ask. He feared that knowing too much might break the fragile peace they had built. She, on the other hand, struggled with guilt. Every moment with him felt stolen from a life she was supposed to want. When the truth finally surfaced, when he realized exactly who she was, the weight of their differences crashed down on them both. He questioned whether he belonged in her world at all. She questioned whether her world had ever truly belonged to her. Love had arrived quietly, but now it stood at the edge of something dangerous. Two hearts from opposite sides of society had met, and though the connection was real, the path ahead promised resistance, judgment, and tests neither of them was prepared for yet. As their relationship deepened, love began to feel less like a secret escape and more like a fragile thing exposed to the world. What had once been quiet meetings and simple conversations slowly attracted attention. People noticed the way he dressed, the way he spoke, the way he didn't belong. Whispers followed them in public places, subtle at first, then sharper. To society, he was an anomaly, someone who had wandered too close to wealth without permission. The boy felt the pressure growing in ways he had never experienced before. Waiters treated him differently when they sat together. Security guards watched him a little too closely. Conversations stopped when he entered certain rooms. None of it was openly cruel, yet every glance carried the same message. You are temporary. He tried to ignore it, reminding himself that his feelings were real, that love didn't require approval. Still, doubt crept in during quiet moments, gnawing at his confidence. For the girl, the scrutiny was even more suffocating. Friends questioned her choices with polite smiles that barely hid their judgment. Family acquaintances warned her that relationships like this were phases, mistakes that could damage reputations. She was advised to think logically, to remember her responsibilities. Love, they said, was easy, but legacy was forever. Each warning felt like a chain tightening around her heart. Money, once invisible between them, began influencing everything. He insisted on paying whenever he could, even when it strained him. She pretended not to notice, though it hurt to watch him struggle over things that meant nothing to her financially. Small disagreements emerged, not from lack of love, but from pride. He wanted to prove he was enough. She wanted to convince him that he didn't need to be rich to be worthy. Public moments became tests. A charity event where he felt painfully out of place. A gathering where someone casually asked what he did, with a tone that reduced his existence to income. Each incident left invisible scars. He smiled through humiliation, while she burned with quiet anger at a world that measured value in numbers. Despite everything, love held on. Late-night conversations became their refuge, where they spoke honestly about fear, shame, and hope. They promised each other that no amount of money or judgment would define them. Yet deep down, both sensed that society was only warming up. What began as whispers was becoming a storm, and love, pure as it was about to be tested in ways neither had imagined. The first real strike came quietly, disguised as concern. Powerful people from her world began stepping in, not with open hostility, but with calculated politeness. Doors that had once been open to him suddenly closed. Opportunities he had been working toward disappeared without explanation. It became clear that love was no longer just an emotional risk. It was now a threat to powerful interests determined to restore order. Her family moved with precision. Background checks were run. His past was examined for flaws that could be magnified. Old mistakes, normal for any struggling young man, were twisted into evidence that he was unworthy. He wasn't confronted directly at first. Instead, pressure built around him. Landlords raised rent. Employers grew distant. Friends received warnings to stay away. The message was unmistakable. Leave or be crushed. The boy felt trapped between love and dignity. Each new obstacle chipped away at his confidence, yet he refused to blame her. He knew she wasn't the one pulling the strings, but the power behind her name was impossible to ignore. Pride became both his shield and his weakness. He wanted to stand tall, to prove that money couldn't define a man. But every day, the cost of resistance grew heavier. She sensed the change before he admitted it. The exhaustion in his voice, the way he avoided talking about work, the forced smiles that replaced his natural warmth. When she confronted her family, she was met with calm, devastating logic. They spoke of image, stability, and risk. They told her he would eventually resent her wealth. They said love like this always ends in bitterness. Their words planted doubt, not because she believed them, but because she feared they might become true. The humiliation escalated. At a public event, he was deliberately excluded, made to wait while others were ushered in. Laughter followed. Cameras caught the moment. Overnight, the story shifted. He wasn't just poor. He was an embarrassment. Online commentary tore him apart, questioning his motives, painting him as a gold digger chasing privilege. He had no platform to defend himself, no power to fight back. That night, something broke inside him. Not his love, but his illusion that purity alone could protect them. He realized power didn't need to argue. It only needed to apply pressure until resistance collapsed. Torn between staying and dragging her into endless conflict, or walking away to preserve what little pride he had left, he faced the hardest truth of all. Love could survive poverty, but it might not survive power determined to destroy it. The breaking point didn't arrive with shouting or ultimatums. It came in silence, after weeks of pressure, public embarrassment, and quiet suffering. The space between them began to feel heavier than any argument. They still loved each other deeply, but every moment together was now shadowed by consequences. Love no longer felt like freedom. It felt like a battlefield where neither could win without losing something essential. Her family made their final move, not against him, but through her. She was presented with choices framed as responsibility: a future secured by legacy, influence, and approval, or a life of constant struggle, scrutiny, and sacrifice. They didn't forbid her from loving him. They simply showed her the cost. Board seats, foundations, long-planned projects, all subtly placed on the line. The message was cruelly clear: love him and watch everything else collapse. She tried to fight back. She argued that happiness mattered more than image, that love couldn't be replaced by wealth. But power doesn't shout. It waits. It let her see how easily his life could be dismantled, how staying with her would mean endless attacks on his dignity. Slowly, painfully, she realized that love was being used as a weapon against the very person she wanted to protect. He reached his decision alone. Watching her suffer because of him hurt more than any humiliation he had endured. His pride, once wounded, now transformed into resolve. He told himself that loving her meant choosing what was best for her, even if it destroyed him inside. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but his heart was breaking. He said she deserved a world where she didn't have to fight every day just to be happy. The separation was quiet, almost unreal. No dramatic goodbye, no public scene. Just two people standing at the edge of a love they couldn't keep without burning everything else down. She begged him not to decide for her, but he knew power would never stop coming for them. Walking away felt like the only way to give her peace. Afterward, life moved forward, but without color. She returned to a world that welcomed her back as if nothing had happened, yet every luxury felt hollow. He disappeared into anonymity, carrying the weight of a love sacrificed in silence. Both survived, but neither was whole. The choice had been made, not by love, but by money, power, and pride. And the cost of that choice would linger far longer than either of them expected. Time passed, as it always does, softening some wounds while leaving others untouched. The world moved on, headlines changed, and society found new stories to consume. But for them, love never truly ended. It simply went quiet. They lived separate lives now, shaped by the choice that had torn them apart, each carrying the same unanswered question: what if love had been allowed to win? He rebuilt himself far from the shadow of her wealth. Without bitterness, but with scars, he worked harder than ever, not to prove anything to the world, but to reclaim his own dignity. Struggle taught him strength, and loss gave him clarity. Slowly he became someone respected on his own terms, not powerful, not famous, but unbreakable. Love had taken everything from him, yet somehow left him stronger. She fulfilled every expectation placed upon her. Success followed her effortlessly, as it always had. From the outside, her life looked perfect, admired, influential, untouchable. But inside, something was missing. Every achievement echoed with the memory of a boy who loved her without fear or agenda. Wealth surrounded her, but connection remained distant. She had gained the world and lost the one thing she couldn't buy. Fate, indifferent to pride and power, brought them together again years later. No grand setup, no dramatic coincidence, just two familiar souls crossing paths. The moment was heavy with everything they never said. They saw the changes in each other, the strength born from suffering, the maturity carved by loss. The love was still there, quieter now, but deeper. This time, there were no illusions. They spoke honestly about the past, about fear, sacrifice, and regret. They understood that love alone had not failed them. Society had. Money had spoken louder than truth. Pride had demanded obedience. Yet standing there, equals at last, they realized something profound. Power had only won because they had been young and vulnerable. Their ending wasn't a fairy tale, but it was honest. Whether they chose to try again or simply found peace in closure mattered less than the truth they finally owned. Pure love had existed between them, and nothing, not money, not power, not pride, had ever been able to erase it. Some loves don't end in forever. They end in meaning,